Now, the steps in problem solving. Let's just go through those steps. Very important for learners to know these steps for exam purposes. Let's go through the steps quickly. First step.
We have to identify the problem.
Second step.
Define the problem.
Third step.
Identify alternatives.
Step number 4.
Evaluate alternatives.
Step number 5.
Choose the best alternative.
Step number 6.
Implement the decision.
Step number 7.
Monitor the decision.
And step number 8.
Evaluate the decision.
Now, learners, you will certainly not have time to rewrite all these steps. The steps are indicated in the resource booklet. And I also indicated that if you do not have the notes, I will email that to you. But Faranaaz, let's just stop here with the problem solving. This afternoon, on our way to Stellenbosch and the telematics session, we had a problem.
Yes, we had a problem and we had to...
And that was step number 1. So
yes, we had a problem.
What
now,
was
what
the
was
problem?
the problem? We have to identify the problem. The problem was that we couldn't find parking.
So parking was the problem.
Parking was a problem. We couldn't find parking.
And so the problem is parking. And so in defining the problem, it was the fact that we couldn't find parking, or parking was not reserved for us.
Yes, there was no parking reserved for telematics. We couldn't park where we would have loved to park, which means we had to now go into step number 3. We had to identify alternatives.
On the spot.
On the spot. I'd find alternatives. How are we going to solve the problem? Because the car has to be parked.
Yes. And we had to be in the studio at a certain time.
Yes. And so we had to come up with those alternatives very quickly.
Yes. So what were the alternatives? Either we had to stay there in the middle of the parking area.
Argue.
That was one option.
And express that we need to park and we have to be at a certain place, which was not this person's problem at all.
Absolutely.
It was our problem.
Yeah.
So he is not interested in solving our problem. This gentleman is interested in advising us. What his job is that there's no parking.
Absolutely.
Right. So we could argue with him.
Yeah. Or we could just leave the car there.
We could leave
switch the car off and leave.
and risk the car being towed away.
Absolutely. But that was one alternative.
That was an alternative, definitely.
The second alternative was we could go and park in the road.
Yes, we could park in the road.
Yeah, okay, but we were just busy identifying possible alternatives. We didn't look at the consequences yet, eh?
No, not yet the consequences. So we could go and park in the road. Alternative number 4 was we could go and park
at the mall.
At the mall.
At the cost.
At the cost. We would have to pay for that parking. So the road parking is free. The parking of just standing right there where we are and just abandoning the vehicle and moving off to where we needed to be, the cost we would have to pay later of risking the vehicle being towed away.
Yeah, but you're one step ahead now again. Remember, we are just identifying the alternatives. Yes. Step number 4 is actually evaluating the alternatives. So now we've got, remember, we leave the car there. First alternative. In the middle of the entrance, blocking everybody's way to the parking. The second one was parking in the road. And the third one was parking in the mall, parking area. So that was identifying the alternatives. Then we had to evaluate the alternatives, right now. First one, leaving the car there in the middle of the parking area, blocking everybody's way. So was that a good option?
It would probably solve the immediate problem of rushing to where we wanted to be. The car would be parked somewhere and we would be off. The risk implied.
They could have towed us away.
They could have towed us away. They could have clamped the wheel.
Absolutely, yes.
Paid a fine.
Yep. Let's look at
it could have caused an accident.
Yeah.
Massive inconvenience to everyone else.
Let's look at the second alternative, parking in the road.
Parking in the road entails that, while it's not a safe space, the car could have been broken into.
Yeah.
I don't know, somebody could have driven into the car.
Oh, please do not. Wish that on my car. Okay, then the third one. The third alternative was
The mall.
the mall.
The mall,
It's quite a distance.
it's a distance from where we actually had to be.
Yeah, yeah.
But the positives were, let's look at the negatives. Must we use the negatives first?
Yeah.
The negatives was that we had to pay. And we had to walk a distance.
Yes.
That's two. The positives were,
It was a safe space.
it's safe and we'd have a ride home.
Yeah. That's good.
We'd have a ride home. So those are the positives.
Okay, so we identified the problem as parking.
Yes.
We defined the problem. We couldn't find,
We couldn't find.
parking wasn't reserved for us.
Allocated for us. Yes.
Allocated, that's correct. Then we identified three alternatives.
Yes.
Leave the
which
car
was
there.
Leave the car
Park in the road
or park at the mall.
at the mall. And then we evaluated each of those alternatives.
Yes, where we mentioned the positive and the negative.
That's correct. And then we chose the best alternative. So we chose to go to the
mall.
We chose to go to the mall.
We chose the mall.
And then we implemented that decision by actually driving to the mall.
Driving to the mall, parking the car, taking a little ticket,
Yeah.
and then walking our way back here. So we implemented that.
So now we just need to monitor our decision. Was that the right decision?
I absolutely think so, because it's not going to be a bright decision to get back wherever we parked the car and discover that the car was no longer there. So,
And then
yes,
we
it
need
was
to
bright.
evaluate the decision. Will we do it again, given the same circumstances?
Yes,
Okay, I do the right thing.
we'll do the right
We'll
thing.
do the right thing. So, learners, that was just a brief role play of the
Steps
steps in problem solving. And